Bill Hast was squeezing venom out of a rattlesnake when suddenly it sank its fangs into his arms. And Bill didn't react to it in any way, since he'd already been bitten by snakes for over 170 times. He worked as a professional snake milker and injected himself with small doses of poisons every day to develop immunity. Intuitively, this profession would have to be the deadliest, but according to statistics, it's the other way around. In this video, I'll tell you about the most dangerous professions, and you'll be shocked to hear which one tops the deadliness list. Here comes the warning, however. As always, viewer discretion is advised. November 2014, San Francisco. A skyscraper window washer named Pedro Perez was suspended on a platform on the level of the 11th floor. He was struggling to reach one particular stain on a window. Then Pedro made a fatal mistake. He disconnected a lanyard from his safety harness to be able to reach the stain. Suddenly, the window washer lost his balance and plummeted. However, by some miracle, the man didn't hit the ground. Instead, he landed on a car passing through the street below. Passerby were shocked by what they'd just witnessed, and a woman ran up to Pedro and covered him with her jacket. He wasn't moving and was unconscious, and no one could tell if he was still alive or not. A person who was even more scared and confused was the car driver, who didn't even understand at first what had happened. Back then, he didn't know he'd accidentally saved Pedro's life. The fact that the window washer had landed on the car had somewhat softened the impact. If the vehicle had passed a millisecond later, Pedro would have crashed to his death against the asphalt. But in such a risky profession, a happy ending is incredibly rare. On December 7, 2007, in New York, brothers Edgar and Alcides Moreno were washing skyscraper windows on the 47th floor. Suddenly, the rope supporting the platform snapped, causing it to tilt to one side and sending the two washers tumbling off. Edgar died on the spot, and Alcides' fall was slowed down by the scaffolding. It took over 11 liters of blood, months of intensive care, and lengthy rehabilitation to save his life. Window washers entrust ropes and platforms that sometimes turn out to be faulty with their lives. Because of this, around 4 representatives of this profession die in the US annually. This statistic is almost equal to that of stuntmen and stuntwomen on film sets. 2017, Vancouver, Canada. Joy S.J. Harris, an experienced motorcyclist and stuntwoman, dressed in black leather, was getting ready to perform her first ever cinema stunt on the set of a blockbuster movie, Deadpool 2. According to the plan, Joy was supposed to ride several meters at high speed, jump over some stairs, and stop near the door of a building. The cameras were all set up, the director was giving his last-minute instructions, and the crew held their breaths. Joy hit the gas of a Ducati 939 Hyperstrada, but quickly gained too high a speed, causing the motorcycle to jump over a curb, crash into a building wall, and hit a window. The woman's death was instant, and even the presence of an ambulance on set couldn't change anything. According to eyewitnesses, Harris had successfully done the stunt 5 times before filming, but the accident happened during the very first take. The fact that Domino, the character the girl was playing, was a daredevil and didn't wear a helmet, which could have saved Harris, played a fatal role in the accident. The danger of being a professional stuntman or woman is obvious, and according to the statistics, 1 to 5 stuntmen and stuntwomen die in the US every year. However, some risk their lives in real life, not for entertainment, but for science. May 13th, 2022, Minnesota, USA. A group of researchers, one of whom was a meteorologist named Martha Lillian Llanos Rodriguez, was chasing a tornado. However, the storm chasers were forced to stop on a motorway near Worthington, Ohio. The mighty wind had torn the power lines, which blocked traffic. Storm chasers, such as Martha, consciously choose to go near the storm's epicenter to study and document extreme weather phenomena, putting their lives on the line. Their task is to get around the force of nature while staying behind the tornado. Martha was in love with her work and dreamed of improving the forecasting of catastrophic storms in Mexico. However, her dream was not destined to come true, as on that fateful day, when the team was discussing its further line of action, a truck suddenly hit their car. Due to the strong wind and poor visibility, the driver didn't manage to hit the brakes in time. The impact turned out deadly for Martha, who was inside the car. The woman had narrowly escaped death by a storm many times before, but it was the consequences of a storm that ended up killing her. And that's no rarity. A renowned storm chaser, Roger Edwards, admitted that the greatest threat isn't posed by the force of nature itself, it's the slippery roads that cause accidents. Approximately 5 storm chasers die in the US annually. The risks and professions connected to forces of nature are very high, and the next line of work on the list is yet another proof of this. April 18, 2014, Mount Everest, Nepal. Ankanji Sherpa and a group of other Sherpas were working in the morning, transporting mountaineering gear over Khumbu Glacier. They knew this was the most dangerous route to the top of the work. But for Sherpas, this was just another workday. They were moving together, helping each other carry their heavy load: tents, food, ropes, and oxygen tanks. The mountaineers who'd hired them for the ascent were still relaxing at base camp, with no idea of the risks their mountain guides were putting themselves under. Sherpas are more than just guides. They're the pillars of every expedition. Ankanji was one of the most experienced masters in his field and had summited Mount Everest many times. However, when the group approached an area called Popcorn Field, the silence was broken by a deafening, crackling sound. An avalanche started in the hanging glaciers, carrying giant ice boulders downward. The Sherpas didn't even have enough time to react. The avalanche covered some group members, leaving them no chance of survival. Kaji and 12 other Sherpas died on the spot. 3 went missing, and a few others sustained severe injuries. This event became one of the most terrifying tragedies in the history of Mount Everest. On average, 8 Sherpas die on Everest every year. The number of deaths in all of the professions I've just discussed is more or less similar, but the fatality figure for the one I'm going to talk about next shows too sharp of an increase. June 18, 2024, Malaysia. A 22-year-old diver, whose name remains unmentioned by news outlets, was working at a diving support vessel that served the purpose of maintenance work on ships. The worker dived under the surface to clean a ship's hull when his rope got entangled with the boat propeller. The moment the propeller started rotating, it sucked the diver in, shredding his body and breaking his bones. Despite the fast reaction of a rescue squad, the diver succumbed to his wounds in the hospital. That was the second death of a diver during work in Malaysia in that year. In general, the fatality rate in boat propeller accidents is catastrophically high, standing at approximately 9 deaths per year. But the next line of work is even more dangerous. August 10th, 2010, Alaska, USA. A small airplane was slowly traversing the sky over a mountainous terrain, carrying passengers to a remote settlement. Theron Smith, an experienced bush pilot, was watching the landscape closely, trying to dodge the thick fog descending fast onto the mountain slopes. Suddenly, the plane started being tossed about by strong wind gusts, and visibility dropped to just several meters. The job of a bush pilot involves steering small planes on routes with uneven terrains, which cannot be traversed by larger planes. This is especially needed in Alaska, where 82% of all settlements are only connected via air routes. In the conditions of poor visibility, Theron's plane eventually crashed on a mountain slope. There were 9 people aboard, 5 of which, including former Senator Ted Stevens, died on the spot. An investigation showed that the main cause of the tragedy was flying into terrain at low speed, one of the most common scenarios of air crashes in Alaska. In addition, this state is where about 20% of all air crashes in the US happen. In a year, 40 bush pilots die in the US on average. However, that's not even the deadliest job. June 20th, 2021, Zhuzhou, China. 23-year-old Zhao Kaiyame had over 100,000 followers on TikTok. She shared reels about her daily life working a job that seemed unusual for someone so fragile. Zhao worked as an operator of a giant construction crane. On that day, all workers started going home at 5:40 p.m. But the girl was in no hurry. She wanted to hold a live stream after hours. As usual, Zhao was telling fun stories, singing, and even dancing a bit. But at some point, the phone slipped out of her hands, and the girl's followers could hear her scream and the sound of her falling, hitting the iron railings of the crane. As it turned out, Zhao had fallen out of her crane from a height of 50 meters and died on the spot. On average, fatal accidents happen to 42 crane operators in the US every year. Personally, I'm scared of being at such a height. but the thought of the ocean's boundless depths makes me even more anxious. February 11th, 2017, Bering Sea, near St. Paul Island. Icy waves were ruthlessly crashing against the board of a crabber named the Destination. When Captain Jeff Hathaway and his 5 crew members were finishing up their preparations for another voyage. The job of a commercial fisherman is pretty hard. They often work in horrible weather conditions, which complicates the execution of tasks. That's why even the very experienced crew in the command of Captain Hathaway wasn't completely safe from unforeseen circumstances. The boat was covered in ice, making it overloaded and uncontrollable. It capsized in the icy water, and the crew had no time to react. The waves immediately pulled the boat and everyone aboard to the bottom. Later, in the summer of 2017, a federal research boat located the Destination at a depth of over 76 meters on the ocean floor. The bodies of the 6 crew members were never found. This became Alaska's biggest crabber disaster in the last 10 years. According to the statistics, half of all deaths in this line of work are caused by ships capsizing, like in the case of the Destination. 35% account for falling overboard, and the remaining percentage of deaths are caused by mechanical injuries and fires. 46 commercial fishers die every year on average. Well, the time has come to reveal the 3 deadliest professions in the world. This world-famous photo titled Kiss of Life was made on July 17, 1967, in Jacksonville, Florida. It depicts a lineman, J.D. Thompson, saving the life of his colleague, Randall Champion. After accidentally grabbing a power line, the lineman got an electric shock of 4,000 volts. Randall had gone unconscious, but Thompson used his first aid skills and started performing CPR on him. This helped Randall regain consciousness. However, sadly, not everyone is this lucky. December 17, 2019, Hanford, Washington, USA. A lineman named Cliff Johnson was strapped into a basket suspended from the power lines over Columbia River. His task was to renovate and modernize the old 21-kilometer-long transmission line. Suddenly, the basket detached from the power line and fell from a height of 30 meters, taking Cliff with it. The man's colleagues immediately rushed to the rescue, pulled him out of the water, and started performing CPR. Later, Cliff was taken to the closest hospital, but sadly, died an hour after his arrival. According to the statistics, 48 line workers die in the U.S. every year. However, the next profession on our list demonstrates that risks aren't always tied to dangerous technology. Sometimes, it's nature that's the killer. March 20th, 2001, the Adirondacks, New York State, USA. A 36-year-old logger, owner of a small logging company, was working alone on a remote private property, felling trees for a client. His saw had cut through an oak trunk, and the tree slowly started tilting. The logger followed the rules and stepped aside, watching the process. However, while falling, the oak hit another tree and ricocheted toward the logger. The man had no time to react, and the tree knocked him off his feet, crushing the poor logger with its colossal weight. On average, 56 loggers die in the U.S. in a year. That's why this line of work takes the second spot in the list of the most dangerous professions. And I'm ready to bet you'd never guess which one's at the top. June 24th, 2019, Manhattan, New York, USA. Robin Heitman, a 20-year-old courier who chose to use the pronouns they and them, was confidently pedaling along 6th Avenue on their way to the next address. Robin was one of the hundreds of bike couriers who work in New York every day, delivering food, documents, and parcels. You can't even imagine how difficult and dangerous this seemingly simple job is. Couriers travel an average distance of 130 to 160 kilometers daily, maneuvering among the cars and crossing dangerous intersections. Most of them work for themselves, meaning they have neither insurance nor vacations. Their earnings depend on the speed of delivery and the number of orders. Robin was no exception. They worked around 10 to 12 hours, and that day was just another busy workday. Almost. Repair work was underway on a part of the avenue, and the courier had to go around the blocked bike lane. Suddenly, Robin hit a truck. The cyclist was flung out of their bike and hit the ground. Meanwhile, the truck driver, Antonio Garcia, just kept on going since he hadn't even felt the impact. Later, though, he saw in his rearview mirror that something was wrong and went back. He was absolutely shocked by having hit a cyclist who had seemingly appeared out of nowhere. Robin had died on the spot. More than 100 people gathered in the streets to commemorate Robin and urge the authorities to take action. Sadly, Robin's story was just one of many. The annual number of cyclist deaths in the U.S. amounts to approximately 1,360 people. The percentage of couriers among them is unknown due to them being self-employed. What is known, however, is that 62% of couriers, that is, over a half, get into traffic accidents. Because of this, the injury rate among bike couriers is 15 times higher than among the representatives of other professions. All of this gives me grounds to call this line of work the most dangerous one. To be honest, I'm just as shocked by this data as you probably are. Even the professions I expected to see on this list surprise me with their statistics. How risky is your job? Share your thoughts in the comments. Tell us about your profession and the dangers you face or could potentially face. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more fascinating top list videos that are sure to surprise you.